If you're moving to Jacksonville, specifically Atlantic or Neptune Beach, you've probably stumbled across a handful of pros and cons to living in these areas. Now, some of these pros may be cons, and some of the cons may even be pros for you depending on your situation. But today we're going to give you a general overview of what it's like to live in these areas and help you decide if you'd like to call Atlantic Beach or Neptune Beach your next home. So let's dive in. So onto our first pro about Atlantic and Neptune Beach is the Beach's Town Center, or also known as the Corner. This is a great spot to go check out some boutique stores. You've got great restaurants and even some nightlife. Neptune Beach is home to one of Duval County's oldest bars, Pete's. They actually just turned 90 years old this past year. You also have Lemon Bar, which is one of our few oceanfront bars, and then a handful of great restaurants such as Flying Iguana, Mezzaluna, and even Ragtime. Now in Atlantic Beach, you've got a beautiful oceanfront hotel called One Ocean Resort and Spa. As the name suggests, they have an awesome spa on property, and this hotel is also pet friendly. It's a great place to host weddings as well. Now the Beach's Town Center is definitely the place to be if you live at the beaches. It's a great spot to hang out on the weekends, grab a late night dinner. It's very walkable, bikeable, and you have easy access to the beach as well. Now you'll find that a lot of locals here actually talk about Neptune and Atlantic Beach pretty interchangeably, and that is because the Beach's Town Center. You'll find that half the town center, or the southern part of it, is actually located in Neptune Beach, and the north part of the town center is located in Atlantic Beach, and it's divided by Atlantic Boulevard. Now, while the Beach's Town Center has a ton to offer, there are also a handful of cons that we hear with this area as well, probably the biggest one being the parking situation. There's not a ton of parking at the Beach's Town Center, and the parking that is available is actually metered. There is also valet parking available, which depending on which restaurant you're going to, you can get a little punch card and then you're just tipping, so it's not very costly. If you're not going to one of those restaurants, then it's typically a $15 charge, and of course, the metered or pay to park in other areas. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Beach's Town Center is divided by Atlantic Boulevard, which is actually one of the main or busier roads in this area. So when you're getting into the Beach's Town Center, traffic can be pretty backed up. There's also a Starbucks on the corner there, and with their drive-through traffic, it can cause a little bit of mayhem, plus all the traffic lights. So that's just something to be aware of as well. Another common con that we hear from a lot of locals here is how rowdy it can get at night. It's definitely not like Jack's Beach bars where you have the more livelier and younger crowd. However, you do have bars and restaurants that are open late night, and you do even have some local bands that come and play at restaurants like The Local, and you can hear the band a couple of blocks down. For example, I live 3 blocks south of the Beach's Town Center, and I can walk out on my back patio late at night and I can hear the band. That's not necessarily a problem for me, and there are a lot of areas where you can't hear it and it may not be an issue for you. However, we just want to let you know that is a common con that we hear. On to our next pro for the video today is the best way to get around town at the beaches, being on golf carts. Golf carts are very popular here at the beaches, especially in Atlantic and Neptune Beach. It's great, easy access to get you to the beaches and of course the Beach's Town Center. You're going to see a lot of other modes of transportation other than your normal day-to-day vehicle that you use, including mopeds, motorized bikes, and of course golf carts, as I've mentioned. Locals love it because it gets some of the traffic off of 3rd Street, and of course it does give you easy access to the back roads like 1st or 2nd Street. And locals also love it because it saves you money on gas. Now on the flip side, let's talk about some cons that come along with the traffic here at the beaches. First and foremost, something to know is that 3rd Street, or A1A, runs from Atlantic Beach all the way down to Ponte Vedra Beach and almost into St. Augustine. Because of that, there's a lot of continuous traffic that is happening, and A1A or 3rd Street gets very backed up at certain times of the day. There's also lots of restaurants and hotels around the area, so you're gonna have a lot of food delivery trucks and of course tourists coming in and out, so it just adds to the traffic that we can see in these areas. Crossing the street can prove to be a little bit difficult as well. However, they have done some improvements recently to add some crosswalks with lights for easier access to get from the east to the west side of A1A. So on to our next pro for these areas, and one of my personal favorites being a local of Neptune Beach is the small neighborly feel that you get when living in these areas. There's tons of things to do, including farmers markets, art walks, you have sporting leagues or running clubs that you can get involved in. You even have plenty of parks to access like Jarboe Park, which is located in Neptune Beach. It's a great spot to go and play pickleball or tennis, especially if you're a beginner. Now, one of the cons that comes along with this small neighborhood feel is truly how much people love living here. And because of that, there's not a ton of opportunity opportunity for housing in these areas. You do have rental opportunities, which is great, but there's not a lot of turnover in individuals that are looking to sell their houses. A lot of these are generational homes that have owned these lots and these houses for years, and they just are not planning to get rid of them. Now, if you're limiting your search only to these two areas, Atlantic and Neptune Beach, something to keep in mind is that these areas are a lot smaller than other parts of the beaches or Jacksonville in general. So for example, Neptune Beach on a scale compared to Jacksonville is a lot smaller. There's not as much inventory. Atlantic Beach is a little bit larger and has some more to offer, but it's also going to depend on what budget is and what you're looking for. Now, it is definitely not impossible to get into Neptune or Atlantic Beach, but it is very important to make sure you're working with a local expert. So be sure to email us at info@theroccogroup.com. We'd be happy to help you explore options and potentially even find an off-market property for you before it even hits the market. Now, you may find in other small beach towns that they're pretty far removed from your day-to-day needs or the essentials, but that is definitely not the case here, and that's one of the other pros that we find with Atlantic and Neptune Beach. As we've mentioned before, everything is very easy to access here in Atlantic and Neptune Beach. We have tons of convenience stores, grocery stores, restaurants, as we've talked about. We even have two Publixes right next door to each other, so it's complete convenience at your fingertips. Those small beach towns typically don't have convenience, and you tend to find these more in those touristy beach towns. Atlantic and Neptune Beach are definitely places where people come to live versus to visit. Now, while Atlantic and Neptune Beach have a lot of conveniences to offer, something that is definitely a con for locals that do not live east of 3rd Street is finding access to parking to actually get to the beaches in Atlantic and Neptune Beach. Now, of course, as we mentioned earlier, you have some paid parking or metered parking around the beach's town center, and then you do have a main access to the beach through there. Otherwise, you're typically parking west of 3rd Street and having to walk if you cannot find one of the few side street parkings in more of the residential areas. Because Atlantic and Neptune Beach are heavily residential, there's not a lot of public parking accesses in these areas. However, it's not far to just travel a couple blocks south and get into Jacksonville Beach, where you do have more public access and parking to then walk down to the beach itself. Now, our last pro for the day is the beach's lifestyle. Truly nothing can beat it. We have beautiful weather year-round, very mild winters, and you can actually access the beach throughout the year. Now, you may not necessarily be soaking up the sun year-round, but there's plenty of activities to do, from walking to biking to doing a workout on the beach, or even bringing your four-legged friend along. Neptune Beach is dog-friendly part of the year, and Atlantic Beach is dog-friendly year-round. Now, aside from the many activities that you'll see individuals partaking in on the sand, the beaches is a great place to do a cookout, to have a photo shoot, or even a wedding. And even in Atlantic Beach, it's very common during certain times of the year to see bonfires. You do have to apply for a permit, but it's very inexpensive, and it's a great time to enjoy with some friends. Now, naturally, with enjoying the beach lifestyle, one of the cons that you have to keep in mind is storm season. We live in Florida. We are susceptible to hurricanes and other storms, but they're not as bad as you might expect, and usually the southern parts of Florida or even the West Coast tend to get hit harder than we do here in Northeast Florida. A lot of times these hurricanes end up turning into tropical storms by the time that they get to us. However, wind and rain and flooding are always a concern during these times, so it's very important to ensure you're listening to your local authorities, make sure you're stocked up on groceries, and just stay safe during these times. Doesn't happen frequently, but of course it is a con that we always want to address. Well, that wraps up our team's list of the pros and cons of living here in Neptune and Atlantic Beach. We hope you learned something and found this video helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We release new videos once a week on all things Northeast Florida. Now, if we can help you with anything or answer any further questions about Atlantic or Neptune Beach, or maybe one of the other areas here in Northeast Florida, be sure to email us at info@theroccogroup.com. We'll see you on the next one.